Well, welcome for the early arrivals. I'm not sure. Either one. Wait just another 2 or 3 minutes and we'll get started. All right. Give it about 1 more minute. Well, I have 12 o'clock now Eastern time, so we will go ahead and get started. So I am Brian Klontz, president of Charitable Solutions. Have with me my partner and editor, heavy lifter of the book, new and improved book, Ryan Raffin. So he'll be taking us through the sort of old book, new book, and most importantly, the new editions and sort of how that is being used. So want to start, you can see the new and super improved with 10% more. I think it's technically 18% more, might be 20% more. And it's an overview, obviously, of our maybe free. It will be free as a PDF. And then we are still working painfully with Amazon to be able to have that updated. So if you'd like to purchase a hard copy, then that is going to be available hopefully in the next day or two, but definitely by the time we send out any of the Q&A for next week with the follow-up materials. So good news is it's in process, waiting for a couple other pieces of paperwork to be updated there. So with that, I will just jump right in. Certainly have any questions, if you don't mind including that in the FAQ, or I'm sorry, in the Q&A portion, just much easier for us to scrape. But we go through, as you know, about a 7-minute sort of overview of the other random things that we do. So sort of jumping in here, I've got the 20th anniversary logo. It's technically our 21st anniversary, but I literally probably paid a little bit too much to the graphic designer to create this little 20th anniversary thing. So I'm going to use it for a while longer. But just celebrated our 21st year. We have 27 people on the team. Ryan, again, as a partner, leads the non-cash area. And our mission since day one has been to help make charitable gifts happen that otherwise wouldn't. That is everything that we do is aligned to that principle and objective. So we do that sort of 6 different buckets. So the first one is non-cash asset risk management, what we're talking about today in terms of a resource around that, of course. We do about maybe 3 to 5% of our time are direct consulting to charities that are working through either preliminary gifts that they've received, or through the exit. And so they just hire us on an hourly basis, again, as consultants to do that. About 95% plus of our time is working with the donor-advised fund created back in 2003 as well, the Decami Foundation, and its sister supporting organization, Decami Asset Trust. So both are national donor-advised funds only taking in illiquid or complex gifts. You can see here our direct DAF investments, I'll talk about a bit on our next slide too, is about 1/3 of all of our current assets. So where people are making donations to us and then asking us to do direct investments into real estate or private business interests, primarily, potentially concentrated public stock positions, but primarily real estate and other private business investments. And then non-cash life income gifts, CRTs, CGAs, which I'll talk about in a moment too. And since inception, we've now completed over $4 billion in these gifts, 100% of which were initially declined by the charities who refer the case over to us. So 4 billion of completed gifts, not referrals. And you can see there about 5.2 million is the average donation. These are all outright gifts, not including any of the CRTs or CGAs. And the average fee has been about 1.2%. So it bounces between about 1.2 and 1.4%, taken at the time of settlement before the final grant is then passed through. National Gift Annuity Foundation, exactly the same thing, but for gift annuities. So Decami is a risk aggregator nationally for these gifts that otherwise charities are not able to accept because of capacity or risk tolerance or timing or taxation. Something's going on where it doesn't meet their gift acceptance. Same thing for gift annuities. We have now over 400 charities that have referred in a completed gift annuity to us. It's about 850 contracts now. It's moving quicker than I can update this. But the bottom line is it's a national independent charity that does nothing but issue gift annuities in 50 states. And then 100% of the residuum is then passed back to the charity or charities that the donor was trying to give it to in the first place. Again, just like Decami on the non-cash side. So we're taking on the asset, the liability, the compliance, the reporting, the investments, all we call the sausage making component of these types of donations, such that charities can still then capture these gifts indirectly through us, and then it comes back to them at the end. So that is growing very quickly. We did 145 gift annuities last year. About a third of those, perhaps interesting to you, were QCD gifts. So a lot more in the QCD space than I ever would have contemplated. But we've got a whole team sort of on that side. For charities that have their own pool, we do gift annuity risk management audits, basically actuarial stress testing. So I have a couple actuaries that we work with to do that and have for 20 years. And then in particular, looking at very large concentrated risks, obviously where that can be problematic, either for existing gifts or an aggregation or accumulation of the gifts. It's like, oh, Mary did one, but it's just 100,000. Yeah, but she's done 36 other ones, so that's a concentration. So those types of analyses, and then also for any prospective donations, if it's very large. So we worked on one a few years back. It was over 50 million. Worked on another one that was 28 million. So a lot in the sort of the 5 to 15 million range, where charities are saying, look, how do we manage that risk? Does reinsurance make sense? If so, at what level? How is that designed? How is that placed? And so on. So gift annuity risk management, charitable appraisals, doing a lot more in this space, still a relatively small portion of what we do overall. But our tagline is, if you can give it to charity, we can appraise it. So qualified appraisals for all of these different areas. So as an example, I do cryptocurrency and life insurance. We have a couple people that do business interest gifts, precious metals, tangible property, and so on, life income, terminations, et cetera. So anything in the charitable appraisal side, estate, life income, or outright, sort of all in this space for additional compliance. Emergency Assistance Fund. So I created a charity about 12, 13 years ago called the Emergency Assistance Foundation. And what it does is it aggregates a number of employer funds that are for disaster relief or personal hardships for their employees. It's grown very, very quickly. We've got about 150 staff on that side, and that's about 390 employer funds now. It's about 13 million total employees that are covered globally. So you can see we did 300 million in grants just for COVID, and about a third to 40% of those grants were international. So we do a lot of global grant making there, again, for hardships or natural disasters. And finally, what we're doing today, not CE, obviously, but in terms of professional education, do a lot of it professional advisor CE that is approved for that, obviously for board, staff, nonprofit donor speeches. So usually do about 60 to 80 of those per year. And then Ryan does a few. We got Russ Willis on staff. Paul Gesperson does that. So we've got a number of people, John Severson, that do these as well. So that's it sort of in a nutshell. All of this sort of rolls back up to this, which is helping make charitable gifts that otherwise, again, wouldn't. And in particular, we always say if it's a good donor with a good asset wanting to do good things, don't say no. We and others are able to help capture those gifts for you. And a lot of advisors on the call today for your clients as well. So if you're taking your clients as a prospective donation to a charity and for whatever reason it's not working well, our whole point is to lubricate that process, make it very tax efficient and very as light of a burden as it could possibly be for everyone to make that gift happen. So relative to that quickly, so these are non-cash assets, almost closed out for 2023. We got one or two gifts we're trying to completely nail down. Key point, as I mentioned before, 100% of these gifts were declined by the referring charity, 100%. So we received 161 donations. It'll probably be closer to 162 or 63. 1.1 billion in donations, again, all of which were declined. How that is broken down, you can see 41 of the 161 real estate for about 90 million, so about 2 million per. By the way, this is about 6 million, 6.5 million per. We had two very, very large outliers. If you sort of take those out, it still would be about 4 million per donation. So these tend to be very large, and these are all outright gifts. I think we did include a couple of these in here for CRUTs and a couple for CGAs. So a few for CGAs. So, but generally these are outright donations, major gifts. Of the 161, 91 are business interest gifts, so roughly $1 billion, so 940 million. Key point, last 5 years, it's the same. So the ratio is exactly the same. It's about 90% of these are business interest gifts. And then that's broken down C Corp, S Corp, LLC. Limited partnerships, you can see this breakdown. It's a little skewed in that a number of LLCs elect to be taxed as S Corp. So there are probably another 10-ish that would be otherwise technically deemed S Corps. So we do a lot in that UBIT space. Cryptocurrency, you can see there. Everybody wants to talk about it. It's super shiny. But we did 11. My guess, Ryan leads that whole area. My guess is that probably took 50 to 60 to 80 conversations to get to the 11 of different donors. So it's usually 8 conversations for every one completed gift on the normal non-cash side. And it's probably 25 to 30 conversations on the crypto side to have a completed gift. So a lot more hand-holding and tire kicking in this space. I still get a number of calls and emails from charities and advisors for that matter going, oh, I want to focus on crypto. How do we do that? If you can't spell cryptocurrency, I don't care. 90% are coming from business interests. People are not focused on business. It's 90% this year, 90% last year, 90% the year before, 90% the year before. I mean, it's 90%. So focus where the big marlin, the most of them are swimming. Fish for those. Don't fish for the shiny, flashy things that are somewhat new, all things being equal. Cash gifts, these are primarily gifts that are being made to us to then do direct investments into one of these types of assets. So either shorter or more likely a longer term hold within the donor advised fund, and then a couple other things. So gives you a quick overview. So what's the agenda? Here we are to the content. Agenda is talking about the old book. So we had, now this is the 3rd edition, which means obviously there were 2 other editions. So sort of what is it, history, how do you get the new book? And so you'll be able to do that as we speak, the new edition, except on Amazon, but the PDF free version. How do you use it? What's actually new in the new book? So what has changed certainly from the 1st edition, but more specifically from the 2nd edition in terms of the new topics and items. And then most importantly too, this was a funded grant project from the Charitable Advisor, Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy program, the CAP program. So one little slide on that in terms of how it fits within that program and brief overview of the program overall. Ryan very, very correctly and astutely included a modification to our disclaimer. And so check with your advisors to verify any information in this webinar or in the book. So you can look in the book. Either way, these are free. Do not sue us. So if there's something we say, they're like, oh, that's not true. Check with your advisors. We do not want to have lawsuits. So that's a key point. So the old book, let's talk about that briefly. So the old book, we wrote that again as part of the grant from the American College. And amazingly, Oprah was able to get the book, put that as part of her favorite things, and then included that under the seats. So every once in a while they would win cars, as you know, for everybody that was in the audience. Well, even better, I might suggest, this book was under their seat. So I was able to get, like, the moment that they looked under their seats to get the book, I had somebody take a picture, because you're all thinking, oh, I don't think that's true. So here is the picture. very clear. So very excited. Oprah, it says it right there. There's the book. So she's looking at the book, very excited. Some haters on the webinar today are probably thinking, oh, it's Photoshop. This is a picture. It looks very accurate and real to me. So that really launched us. And then as soon as that happens, who looks at all the Oprah things? All the book clubs. So all the book club people got very excited. So then this became a huge, huge, like number one on the book club circuit. So number one book club selection for 2023. And you're also thinking, oh, I don't think that's true. It is true. And so I had one book club in particular take a picture to prove that this was actually a book club book. So there it is. No, clearly no Photoshop. So there's the book. It's a book club because of wine. So wine, you lead with wine, and then you may or may not discuss the book. So, but number one book club book. So I asked, because they were part of the book club, I said, what has been your experience with the book? How did you hear about it? So first one was her experience. I laughed, I cried. I came away viewing asset opportunities differently. So that's obviously one of the key outcomes of the book. The other one was, these are all actual quotes. So the other one was, this book touched my soul. My mom said it was the best Mother's Day gift that she ever received. Mother's Day is coming up. So as a suggestion there. And then finally, both of my kids were assigned this for summer reading. They said they couldn't put it down. So now school systems evidently are assigning this for summer reading because it's just that good. So there you go, direct evidence. And so all of this, then, we are the number one book on Amazon, number one. And so I will show you exactly what that is. So these are books frequently bought together. So non-cash assets, 2 books by Dr. Russell James. Ours is first, obviously. So of course he did Visual Plan Giving, great book. And then of course, somehow he gets respect for jamming lots of people into MRI machines, doing brain scans, and then talking with them about bequest legacy things. So that's not weird on any level. So, but it's a pretty good book. So you're like, oh, how do you know? Because here it is. It says it right here. We pulled it down. So Amazon bestseller in our category. I didn't say overall. I'm saying in our category, which is books, which you knew, and then business, small business, nonprofit and charities, fundraising, charitable tax planning, plan giving, non-cash assets, bald, North Florida-based authors. So number one. I don't even think there's number two. So number one in that category, we've nailed it. So with all of that as a preface, we'll now go into this amazing book, obviously, that is the number one book within our category. So Ryan, you want to take us into at least what the old book was?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brian. So just as I guess a visual aid, I figured I'd stick in a screenshot of what I think in the publishing world is called the cover matter here. So you can do front cover, spine, back cover. This is the new edition. You can see it's on there, 3rd edition. If you get your hands on a hard copy, this is what it's going to look like. I figured I'd start with a visual here, and Brian had his. This is for anyone who's tuning in every month to these webinars. This one is maybe a little more visual than most of ours, which tend to be pretty text heavy. So just started here with a picture of what the book is actually looking like. But to go under the hood a little bit, Charitable Gifts of Non-Cash Assets, now in the 3rd edition. Very happy to have gotten to a 3rd edition. Written and compiled by Brian. I don't know when he first had the idea to do this, but he looped me in on it in 2016 on the 1st edition. Took quite a bit of time to compile and edit and structure. A lot of conversations with Brian and with the American College to discuss exactly how it should be presented and structured. And we published that in 2016. And then, of course, in 2017, I'm sure you all remember, there was a major tax law change, which resulted in a 2nd edition being published very quickly in 2018. So we had to scramble to make a bunch of revisions so it was current, because there were some tax law changes that came only 12 months after we published the 1st edition. Those first 2 editions, I guess, it's been 5 years since we did the 2nd edition. So I would guess most of what people have is the 2nd edition, over 3,000 downloads. And that's just the digital copy, and not counting the hard copies there. So many, many downloads, many signups. We've been able to track this over time, which is great. That's exactly why we published it, is we wanted it to be a resource, and we're glad to see over 3,000 people. When you say it, it's hard to believe. 3,000 people have decided it was at least worthy of considering as a resource. So we've since arrived at a third edition. Over these last 5 years, we've just been compiling a list of new topics, new strategies for planned giving, just over time, a list just that grew and grew and grew. And then eventually we kind of hit critical mass and said, okay, we've got enough here that we can really put out a third edition that is worthy of a new edition. So I'll talk more about what's new, but that's kind of how we approached it and how it's evolved. In terms of who is involved, we have contributions from many of the top experts in the nonprofit and planned giving space, some of whom are in attendance today. I didn't check this on Tuesdays, I should have, but I know that Phil Cubetta and Randy Fox are on the webinar right now, or they were a few minutes ago at least. So they both contributed. Phil, I think, has actually the very first substantive content in the book in terms of a very thoughtful and literate introduction to this topic and why it's worthwhile. Randy Fox provided a great case study on donating collectible vehicles. So a pretty niche topic. And I think the case study really helped drive the point home of how that can work. Because that is it is an inquiry that comes up quite often, and it's hard to find the right case. But Randy had a great case study on when and how it can work. Other contributors who may have been on Tuesday's webinar, and like I said, I didn't think to check then. Joe Hancock, Chris Hoyt, Dr. Russell James, who Brian already mentioned, did contribute as well. Phil Purcell, Dennis Walsh, among others. So lots of the top names in this space generally have contributed, along with a lot of members of the Charitable Solutions team. So Brian and myself, in this third edition, Sarah Hawk, one of the other attorneys on our team, was an assistant editor. She contributed some content. We also had Russ Willis, who is probably on this webinar, I would guess. He usually is. He was probably on Tuesdays, if not today. Gary Sneerson, Rebecca Dupre. So a lot of members of our team. Paul Casperson, I don't know how he escaped providing content. We'll get you for the fourth edition, Paul. I think you're on today as well. So lots of people contributing here, both within our team and just broadly in the planned giving space. So that's the kind of the history of the book. And so with that in mind, you're probably wondering how you can get your hands on it. Well, good news is there's a free edition and a paid edition. The free edition is available now. That is a digital PDF copy. You can get it on the Charitable Solutions website, charitablesolutionsllc.com. It's right there on the screen in front of you, but again, charitablesolutionsllc.com. I even went out of my way to include a working hyperlink in the slide deck, even though no one watching this will be able to click on that hyperlink, because I felt that was going to be more salient to the viewer. I don't know if that's true, but I just feel like when it's underlined in blue, people go, oh, okay, it's a real hyperlink, it's a real website, even though that's not necessarily true. And then I've got a screenshot there with exactly where you find it on our website under the resources tab. And then there is just a little subsection there that says book charitable gifts of non-cash assets. So you can get that very easily. And I know that to be true because not only did I try it earlier in the week and found the new PDF, the people on Tuesday's webinar were doing it as we were presenting and saying in the chat that they were able to get the new copy easily. So if you want to get it right now, right this very second, you can on our website, charitablesolutionsllc.com. The free copy does require you to provide your name and your email address. However, if you're watching the webinar live, that means you're already in our system with your name and email address. So it should be easy for you to provide. And if you're watching this in the recording, this is one of the few times I've ever addressed the recorded audience directly, you must already be on our website. So you've already done 90% of the work to get the book. You just have to go to a different part of the website. It's even under the same resources tab. So either way, really easy to get. It'll download right away, and you'll have the new copy immediately. If you are interested in the paid copy, that will be up on Amazon shortly. If you go there right now, you'll see the old edition. You can tell that because it's 417 pages long or something like that, and that's the old copy. So don't buy that one. If you want to buy a hard copy, that is paid. You will have to go out of pocket for that one. But the good news here is, and I've got this on the next slide, I think, it's still only $29. It was $29 when we first published it in 2016. It's $29 today. You're getting more content for the same price, which in today's day and age, where inflation has been a big topic for about 2 years now, and everyone's seen it in their own day-to-day lives, same price, more stuff. So I think that's a pretty good deal if you do want to pay for the hard copy. How to find it? Yeah, just search charitable gifts of non-cash assets. You can search for Brian's name. It'll come up as the first result. You can search for my name. It'll come up as the first result. Easy to find on Amazon. And when that new copy does come out, which I really do think will be either later today or tomorrow, when we send out the follow-up email, and anyone who's watched these webinars before knows that we send out a follow-up email. We'll just let everyone know to confirm, hey, the new copy is up on Amazon. We would have had it up already, but there was an issue with the W-9 that we provided that turned out to be not an issue at all. It was just someone had to call Amazon and yell at them and tell them to get the book up. So it's still in process. So 2 ways to get it: paid and free, and the free is available now. So by all means, please go to the website, get your own copy, and hope that it can be a good tool. So once you've got it, though, how do you use it? What do you do with this? What do you do with this copy? So first, we needed to make sure on the timing. Brian said in his email promoting this month's webinar, we couldn't quite get it out in time for Valentine's Day, but we could get it out in time for spring break. So that's really the thing you have to keep in mind is you're probably booking a flight somewhere warm. There's probably a beach, maybe a pool. You've got to get the book in time. So it's available now. You can have it for your poolside beach reading. What do you want to do? You want to start at page 1 and plow all the way through the following 490 pages. Read it cover to cover. No, not really. No, you shouldn't do that. I know people who have tried. It's not recommended. It doesn't actually work very well that way, and it wasn't intended to work very well that way. So it's organized by topic and expertise level. And what we've got here, the way this book has really evolved, it now kind of has 3 sections. First is that introduction to planned giving and non-cash donations, kind of conceptually, how does this work? Why should this work? Why is this appealing to donors? And that's the section I mentioned that Phil wrote the very, very introduction to. Brian has an introduction as well. Jay Steenhuisen has a great article in there with kind of questions and how to raise this topic with donors. So that's kind of the first section. It also has some summary content on definitions of a lot of the frequently used terms and summaries of the frequent concepts like donations of business interests at a very, very high level, kind of 1-sentence summaries. So that's the first section. The second section is where it really goes into the different asset types. And that's the bulk of the book and was always intended to be. So each chapter there, each asset type has 4 or 5 different subsections. The first is the quick takeaways, 2 pages, the good, the bad, and the ugly in a lot of ways. I think the life insurance article in that section is explicitly organized that way. So the quick takeaways, kind of, if you have a call coming up with a donor, you need to really have just a high level understanding of why someone would do this, what the big hurdles might be. That's the idea behind the quick takeaways section. You can read it in 5-10 minutes and at least orient yourself towards this particular asset type and how that works for non-cash giving. Then there's an intermediate overview. I think I wrote every single one of those. I think that was most of the work that I did on this in 2016. I've added more content myself since. That is intended to kind of bridge the gap between that high level overview and the following section, which is the advanced discussion. So the intermediate section goes into a little more depth, and usually that's 4 or 5 pages, giving just a little more detail. And then finally, in terms of the levels of depth, you have that advanced discussion. And that's where we have these outside contributors providing articles that go into a lot of depth. And you're seeing a lot of analysis that can be quite technical in some cases, which is sometimes appropriate for the asset type. I mean, the rules for these different assets are not always the same, and there are some very technical and important differences. So that's why we wanted to have these outside contributors provide this very nuanced conversation in the advanced section. And then finally, following that are special topics, and that's where we've seen a lot of addition in the second edition and the third edition. New content there where maybe it didn't fit into the advanced discussion. It wasn't something that came up in that original article, but it was worthy of a few more pages, a little more discussion. And so we have those, not for every asset type, but for a lot of them. And 1 or 2 chapters even has multiple special topic sections. And then finally, this isn't on the slide, but there are additional resources, further reading for each of the asset types. And sometimes it's just more articles. Sometimes it is court cases, tax law cases, revenue rulings, the really fun stuff. So we've got that for each asset type as well. And then the third section, and this is the section that has gotten much longer over time, is our appendix. And that's special considerations for planned giving with non-cash assets. That is not as focused on particular asset types. It is more focused on particular tax rules, donor situations, planned giving issues and considerations. And that section has probably gone from, it was maybe 50 pages. I should look at this, maybe 50 pages in the first edition. I would guess that is 2 or 3 times as long now. So it's gotten quite a bit longer over time. And so just to go into, on the next slide, a little bit of detail of exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and Ryan, before you jump in, I was just going to make
Of
a
course.
couple of quick points. One, I think I disclosed to you maybe the first time ever we worked together a long time, 8 years, I think, ish, that I was expelled from high school, which is probably not good to say on recording, but I only got through that part of high school before I was expelled with Cliff Notes. I love Cliff Notes. And so there's so many great resources that we have in the charitable tax ecosystem. I mean, tax economics of charitable giving. I mean, I remember, seeing that the first time. I thought it was like, oh my God, this is the best book ever, which is also embarrassing to verbalize. But those books usually required, I would go right to the index. I mean, what's the issue? Oh, it's debt financed income with real estate. Okay, well, I'm gonna go right to the index. And then wait, there are like 14 different sites. I'm exaggerating, but I have to sort of look at one piece in one area and one piece in another area. So what Ryan's going to go through next, sort of how we've organized the book, but because we have these quick takeaways, I view that as the back of the Cliff Notes, like super summary 1-pager. The hope really is it's like a major gift officer. There are a very large number of professional advisors on the call webinar here today. So you've got somebody who's a junior planner or somebody that doesn't come across this much, that they can sort of enter the pool in the right level. And then if interested, they can go sort of as deep as they want, or they can sort of punt at any point too. So to me, logically, at least in my head, if I'm dealing on a real estate case, just get me to the real estate side of the pool. And I just want to sort of work within that particular asset versus some broader topic, we'll say UBIT, which obviously can impact 5 or 6 different planning scenarios. So to me, that always got, I don't want to say confusing, it was super thorough, but just was not the way I sort of thought about things. So in talking with Phil very, very early on in the process and sort of working with Ryan, suckering Ryan into sort of helping this, that was sort of how we laid it out. So I do hope that's helpful. Sort of as you're downloading this and seeing it, or for those that have downloaded in the past, that was at least the concept. So Ryan, how about you take us through then the specific asset types that are in there and some of the newer stuff too we'll talk about next.
Yeah, yeah, and just like you said, so for the viewers, this is all kind of the stuff that's already in there. This is not the new content, which I'm going to talk about next. So the asset types haven't really changed because asset types for charitable donation don't change very often. The most recent new asset type was cryptocurrency, which was already in there from the first edition. So what do we have in here? And this is where you can see it's kind of reflective of our experience, where, you know, Brian mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, the asset types that we see most often, real estate and business interests, you know, those are in there, and those are, you know, maybe not coincidentally, the very first ones that we address. Those are the ones we see the most often: real estate, C corps, S corps, partnerships. You know, those are all getting dedicated chapters. Agricultural assets, life insurance, collectibles, things like mineral rights and vehicles, which I mentioned, cryptocurrency as well, intellectual property, and more. So all the different asset types that we have in there. And I really should emphasize this. This is a resource that I still use quite often. We don't get, you know, as you saw at the beginning of this webinar, we don't get a lot of donations of assets that are outside of those real estate business interests categories. So when a donor comes to us with life insurance or artwork, I'm opening up the book or opening up the PDF and going to that chapter and reminding myself. I mean, the mineral rights chapter that Joe Hancock did, very useful. We got one of those for the first time in a long time last year, and that was basically the first thing I did when I saw that email about that potential gift was, okay, I got to go look at that chapter in the book. So we use this as well. I've talked to other people on our team who are after the new edition already. And I know Brian got an email from another member of our team after Tuesday's webinar about how do we get this this new copy. So it is a resource that we ourselves use. So these are the different asset types. We tried to cover as much as we could. The special consideration topics include valuations, substantiation issues. That's the Dr. Russell James chapter, actually. Charitable estate settlement. That was one that Brian did with Gary Sneerson and Laura Peebles, who used to be on our team, since retired, unfortunately. Post-sale gift planning. You know, how do you help a donor out when they already have sold all their private company stock? Common inquiry, and I'm sure a lot of the financial planners, wealth managers who might be watching this are very used to that situation. They probably run into it more than we do. The intent with that third section, the special consideration topics in the appendix, was to have it be for gift planners. You know, I can handle a gift of this asset type, but, you know, what are the other issues that might come up given this particular situation and the needs of this particular donor? So that's what's in there, kind of existing content going into this third edition. The new content, as we've mentioned, rather significant. So I've got that on the next couple slides, a really quick overview of new topics, new subjects. So we've got a lot that's new. And this was part of the thing with, you know, 5 years since the second edition and us kind of tallying up topics to be included. We have a lot that's new. And part of maybe a peek behind the curtain, part of what we do with these webinars is, you know, we encounter something new in our work day to day, new laws, new strategies, you know, just a new, you know, for whatever reason, something that comes up has been coming up more often than it was a year or two ago. And our first thought is usually, okay, can we do a webinar on that? Because we need a new webinar topic for next month. But then oftentimes we've said, well, that might actually be good for the book. And so that's driven a lot of, nearly all of this new content, I would guess, over the last 5 years that we've compiled and now put into this new edition. So what does that mean? What are we talking about that's new? Retained life estates with leveraged real estate. Can that even be done? That was a situation I ran into about a year ago, and we didn't even know if it was possible. So worked with Russ Willis on that particular prospect, and then Russ thankfully was able to put together some written content for the book here. Delaware statutory trusts. How are those different from normal real estate gifts? And if you've watched a lot of these webinars, you might remember we did a webinar on this topic. So there's an article that was derived from that as well. SPACs and de-SPACs, those have been very popular in the last couple of years. We have done a lot of donations of SPAC stock and had to learn over time how that's different from public stock. And you know, in some ways it works similarly to public stock donations, which are very simple, which I don't think we even cover at all in our book. But you know, SPACs are not quite the same. So some information on that. Exchange funds. If you're like me, your first question is, you know, what do you mean? How is this not an ETF? Is it not the same thing? Nope, I didn't write that section. Turns out they are not the same at all. So that was an inquiry we were getting a lot of for reasons that are not clear to me, maybe to Brian, but I don't know. It just popped up last year. You know, a bunch of inquiries in a short period of time, and you know, that's where we think, okay, maybe there's something here to add to the book. More new content on the next slide here.
You know, we've had the same thing to do with like Delaware statutory trust. We joked internally, it's like, what is like the water? What's going on? So I don't think I had one inquiry for a year, and we must have had at least 4, if not 5, within 6-week period. So again, that's what we said, you know, something must be going on. Let's do a webinar. And then as Ryan said, we have some Forbes articles we typically will produce too, and then sort of repurpose that and expand, obviously, to then include it as part of the book. So we're always keeping, painfully, I think Ryan winced on the phone, but gave him another idea for the next edition, 4th edition topic last night on the phone. Like, okay, I don't want to give you a PTSD here, but add this to the next list. And so as we're still trying to get Amazon to produce this one, but in any event, the point is we try to keep it very timely. And you know, SPACs weren't, I don't even think, part of the language or even a structure in 2016. Could be wrong, but definitely they were not popularized. And a number of these others too, as new financial instruments and vehicles come up, and or as tax law changes, and or as particular interests for whatever reason become more conducive for charitable giving, all of a sudden we seem to get a little mini wave of them. So try to take advantage of that on a couple levels. So whoop, one more, here we go.
Yeah, and and another good example, first bullet point here, NFTs. 3 years ago, certainly, no one had ever heard of NFTs. There was no guidance, literally zero guidance from the IRS on how those donations would work. But then NFTs kind of appeared out of nowhere as part of the cryptocurrency space and ongoing discussions with how cryptocurrency might work. And so, of course, then the question was, how would a donation of an NFT work? We did a webinar on that, myself and Rebecca, and then we wrote up some content there. So that's now one of the added topics for the cryptocurrency chapter. Direct investments, and this again goes back to the beginning of the webinar. Brian mentioned, you know, a lot of the assets that we have within our Decamai Donor Advised Fund. Those are kind of alternative investments that donors have suggested that we invest in within their individual donor advised funds. We've gotten that request more and more and more often over the last 5 years. When we did the last edition, the second edition in 2018, that was not something we were set up to do. And we weren't really getting that question very often. But, you know, 2019, 2020, it started to bubble up more and more. And, you know, from experience, you know, we were doing more and more of it. We thought, that's a perfect piece of new content for the book. The next one, this was not new content. This was one that we had been trying to chase down for a long time, state law issues. Anyone who has worked on these types of gifts before has probably run into this. There's a lot of focus on federal law, federal tax law, but that's not the only law that matters. State rules can make non-cash giving even more complicated. Even think about things as simple as community property states. That's something that you need to take into account, and it's easy to overlook. So that was the goal with the state law issue chapter. It is not, of course, a comprehensive overview of all 50 states and different laws that impact non-cash giving. It is meant to be more of a highlight of what types of issues can come up. But that was something that we had planned to include for a long time. Finally got it into this edition here. There's also a section on supporting organizations. That was another webinar that we did. When and how can supporting organizations be useful tools for non-cash giving? Definitely an overview of the different types of supporting organizations, which is really valuable to know about if you're considering that kind of charitable vehicle, particularly because it does involve quite a bit of advanced planning. So that's something you want to go into well-informed if you are talking to a donor about a supporting organization. And then post-gift considerations. Most of this book is about the advanced planning and evaluation of these non-cash gifts. How do you get these donations done? But we thought it was worth including a section on, okay, once you've taken the non-cash asset, what happens then? What should you keep in mind? And that is a section that's built out when we're taking on these non-cash assets that looked good on the front end, looked very doable, and then we take them on and think, so that section we thought was worth including as well. And there's other new stuff in there, but I think I've probably gone over enough new content already. So 75 pages of new content. It's gone from about 400 pages to about 500. So, there's a lot of new stuff in there. We think it's really worth having. And if you've got one of the old copies, definitely get a new one.
Yeah, but I would say too, as Ryan was politely alluding to, we have been scarred up. So I think since the 2016 copy, I don't even know what, I'm making this up, maybe done 1,500 of these types of transactions, and shocker, they all don't go great. And so a lot of this is, oh, wish we would have known that, or oh, wish this would have been in our own book that we could have otherwise avoided some issue pre-gift, post-gift, or post-settlement. So hopefully our scarring will benefit you as part of this as well. And so, and I haven't checked the Q&A, I probably should do that, but if anybody has actually downloaded the book too, maybe just let me know in the Q&A. We had, I don't know, like 40, 50 people do that. Maybe not that many, 20 or 30 people do that on Tuesday. So if somebody has done that, and it's all working well, you can kind of let the rest of the group know that. I think that'd be great. So
yeah, someone just did. Yeah,
good. Okay.
Patrick, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. So yeah, got to hold my breath to make sure that didn't get screwed up.
Yeah, there's a few people. Yeah, so great.
Good. Good. Good.
It worked
Okay.
on Tuesday. It's still working now. That's
Exactly.
always a good
Yeah.
start.
You never know. So last sort of point here, we got Phil Kubetta on the call, and just so appreciate his mentorship. I've known Phil literally since I was 23 years old, which is also weird on a couple levels. But I had a lot of hair, I had so much hair. But how does this fit within the CAP program? So I've been very honored to be on the advisory board for CAP, I think since 2001-ish. So a very long time, obviously very biased toward the program. And in particular, Phil sort of took his leadership and that baton to really be able to say, look, are there certain components within CAP that might benefit from a resource like this? So this would not exist. It wouldn't be like, oh, it probably wouldn't exist. It would not exist, but for the American College, broadly, Phil specifically, and we worked sort of thinking through what it would look like. And then most importantly, incredible philanthropist Leon Levy in Philadelphia, a very large supporter of a lot of charities, but in particular the American College, but provided a grant to us to be able to create the first edition, which was by far the lion's share of the work. I wish Ryan would not have made the huge mistake of doing this a year before a massive tax law change. So he, again, scarred and learned his lesson there, as I did too. So don't ever write a book before a giant tax law change, by the way, if it is tax oriented. But I digress. But the point is that this is now a component and an additional resource for GS 849. So the did the link here. You can't click the link, just like Ryan said, but sort of call this out. But it's a 3-course graduate sequence. And perhaps most importantly, I should have led with this. We did on August 2021 a full webinar, one of these, about everything you wanted and needed to know about CAP. And so the designation, the process, who's doing it, ton of study groups have been created. So you won't go through it alone unless you want to, in terms of, in particular, community foundations. So Omaha, Dallas, Columbus now, Atlanta. So a lot of these community foundations, Palm Beach, have created localized study groups, but then there's also a national study group. So that's again for CAP overall, but 849 is sort of specific to the vehicles, and this goes into those particular topics. So really want to do a big call out, probably should have led with this, frankly, about the CAP program and the fact that this resource would not exist beyond CAP, but for the bill, but for the college, and most importantly, but for Leon and his support. So with that, I have done a poll. We didn't do a poll on Tuesday, so I'm going to see if you where do I do the poll thing? How do I do that? It's near multiple polls. Let me see. Should be able to do this here, right? Do you know how to do that, Ryan?
There should be an option to launch a poll.
Too.
Yeah.
I did the poll and everything. Well, I'm going to try to figure this out. We'll go maybe to the Q&A, and while I'm doing that, want to at least include the most recent webinars that we've had. So the one I had a question and the Q&A about the donor advised fund proposed regs. And so this is the sound of one shoe dropping, because I think there'll be at least 3 more shoes relative to post 4966, which was obviously taxable distributions. The first set of Treasury proposed regs, we expect there to be 3 more. Again, could be dead by the time those come out, but we'll see. And then we have all the 2023 webinars. We started this in June, I think, of 2020, sort of as a COVID response, where people were asking for some education. We were working on stuff, just a way of being able to continue some level of community and reaching out. And so obviously did not even have the space here to include 2021 and 20. So I think this is our 40th one. And really enjoy doing them. I hope this and others have been helpful, but you can see sort of all the list here. So I'm going to be upset if I can't do the poll. I've got my little panel at the top and everything.
Yeah, while you're still looking at that, Brian, there was a question about
here we go.
About just asking to go over again how to find the book for download. So if you go to our website, and Brian's trying to launch the poll, so I won't ask him to go back on the slides unless he's
nailed it. Look at that.
Ahead of me. Perfect. Yeah. So go to our website, charitablesolutionsllc.com. There's the resources tab up top, and you'll see about halfway down the drop down book charitable gifts of non-cash assets. Click on that. There will be a button to download. You just need to provide your name and email address. You're watching this already live, so you've already done that to be watching this live. So, it should be easy enough. And then you'll be able to download it right away. It's not like there's an emailed link or something that you need to, go into your email and then click the link and then go back into the browser and download. Nothing like that. Just enter your name, email, submit, and then you'll have the PDF right there to download. So it should be really easy, about as easy as it can get for this kind of thing, honestly. If you have any trouble with that, please do reach out. And worst case, I could just send you a copy of the PDF via email. But you're not supposed to get it that way. You're supposed to get it from the website.
Exactly. Well, and to be very transparent too, we collect the email addresses because in my head, the idea is that we would do probably every 2-3 years updates. Again, obviously it's been 6 years since the last update. And then we were going to blast email out all of the people who do it. So we have Salesforce, we have a little box checked within that contact that they've downloaded the book. And so actually we will be doing that once we can kind of figure out how to send out that blast email, but just letting them know, hey, you downloaded the second edition. Great. Just letting you know, we now have a third edition. So if you want to go back in, download that. So it's just a way we're able to keep people up to date. I have figured out how to do the launch. This is just one question, just curious. Based on everything that you've sort of seen and heard so far today. Ryan had no part in this, so you don't yell at Ryan. So here we go. We're going to launch the poll. So what holiday special events would be appropriate to give a life-changing third edition of the Charitable Gifts of Non-Cash Asset book? So you need to look at all of the questions. Don't answer too quickly. Okay, looking better. So we'll see. Boy, people are jumping. Well, yeah, people are jumping on it. Nice.
Yeah, as a panelist, I'm not allowed to vote, but I know how I would vote.
That's right. We'll go ahead in the poll. So this is about, I'll be honest, this is about what I would have expected from this crowd. So you can probably tell how they answer answer to. So I'm sharing the results now. So here you go. So Abris, I probably want to meet that person, so that'd be good. So best man wedding gift, Valentine's, Father's Day, but it's true. All of the above is the correct answer. So the point is that next week, hopefully we'll be able to get out what our next month's webinar topic will be. If you have any ideas on that, we've got a 2 or 3 in the mix, but would love to be this very, be as timely and practical as possible. But we'll have that. Plus, we will have, I guarantee it, or I'll be super upset, if the Amazon link. So then the Amazon link to be able to download or not download, to order the hard copy of the book to the extent that you want. So I'm cheap. I just buy them to like hand them out like as a gift when I do speaking in person from time to time. But when I do my own research with the book, I have the PDF version and do the find and all that kind of stuff. So in any event, I hope this has been helpful. I think we're in good shape. If there are any questions, I'll kind of take a quick look at the Q&A. Thanks for having fun with the poll there. Took me like
There was
15
there was
minutes
one
to
last question here.
Okay. What is that?
Well, you should take a look.
No, it's probably not good. Let's see, Central Florida's a cap study group. Yay, Orlando, exactly. So not as a memorial gift. I would probably agree with that. I don't know. You could try it and just sort of see what the reaction is. But anyway, but I hope everybody's this is helpful. Again, we've been working on this a long time. So appreciate Ryan taking the lead as editor on the book. It was one of the first projects I had him come in, and so he was working with me on the Emergency Assistance Foundation side almost exclusively. And I'm like, wait a minute, his background, legal and sort of tax undergrad, and really interested in the charitable space. I'm like, okay, we'll bring him over to more of the charitable solution side. And then I thought, God Almighty, how am I gonna sort of train him up, for years? And I'm like, I've got a good idea. So, Phil sort of star and with Leon Levy's grant. And I sort of had this idea for a while, half baked, if that. And then so I was like, okay, Ryan, you're going to be the editor of a new book. And so after about 6 months, and I tell him this all the time, he's probably in the top 3 or 4 people nationally, technically now, just having done the book, and obviously all the reps that other transactions that he works on. So in any event, hope all this is helpful. Can't wait to see everybody in person at some point, and we will look forward to having you back for a future webinar. So thanks so much. Download the book, read it from cover to cover if you want. I wouldn't either, but we'll be able to get the info about the Amazon book next week. So thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye.